Hello, folks. Ken Rashad, HBCU Sports. I'm joined by our senior editor, Kendrick Marshall, in which we decided to take this time to go ahead and address recent events that have taken place this week with respect to one, Deion Sanders and his impromptu video rant that he kicked off at the conclusion of the SWAC's football media teleconference on Monday. Obviously, and needless to say, it went viral, and there was a certain tweet that kind of made its rounds as well. So, for those of you who may not be aware of what took place, let's take a look at Deion's video, and we'll see you on the other side.
Thank you. You know what? I'm sorry. It was one last thing I needed to say, and I need all you to understand this. You have a home. This is something that I need to address, and I'm glad you give me the opportunity to. We have an opportunity. The iPhone. We have an opportunity to play against these Power Five, and it's cool. I know some things you do and some things you do for money. I don't agree with that because I think that's the ultimate sign. The other phone, iPhone, the ultimate sign of selling out. I was talking about sellout in our vernacular, and I don't like that terminology. When we do something just for money, what is that called? What is that called? I'm sitting up here. I wanted some numbers, okay? And I'm looking at numbers that they gave me. Marshall got $1.25 million to play against Notre Dame. Appalachian State got $1.5 million to play against Texas A&M. Georgia Southern got $1.4 million to play against Nebraska, okay, and so forth. Now let's get to us. FAMU got $450 to play against North Carolina. Southern, thank God, you got $760. I like that. Alabama State, $590 for UCLA. You probably exhausted that in the flight going all the way across the country. Bethune-Cookman, I don't even know what their payout is. We're still trying to find out that. Alabama A&M, $300,000 as well to play against UAB. If we're going to get our butt kicked, shouldn't it be worth it? How in the world are we selling for the peanuts and the little minute droppings that they're giving us when everybody's darn near 500,000-600,000? Should we get together and huddle up as a HBCU and say we're not playing these beat down games unless we get this? Now, don't go up under it. You can negotiate above, but have the level be 750 or a million. Have something. Make it worth your team's while, because you're going to lose players. You're going to lose pride and dignity when we sit up here and telling you we're just as good, but you go out there and show that we're not as good. We're not nearly as good. And then you're losing 3 to 4 players because of the type of beating that you've got. Now you got to lift them and build them back up the next week to go back there and say, you could do it this week. Forget about last week, but you could do it this week. I don't understand that. I don't understand how we allow these other schools to get these type of purses to play against the same team that we're playing against. So who's negotiating this? Can we get together and form a committee or something and say, we're not doing it unless we get $1 million. Negotiate up, but don't negotiate down. And that $1 million should go directly to your football department. They out there getting their butts kicked. Not the rest of the school. They out there getting their butts kicked. They out there getting abused. They out there getting hurt. They out there getting injured. And then you want to spread it out of the school. I don't agree with that. If they're out there playing, they should reap the benefits of the sacrifices that they're making. I just don't like when I'm seeing guys get 1.4, 1.2, 1.7, or whatever, and we getting peanuts. I don't like that. So that means we're not doing well business-wise. I just want to alarm you on that kind of stuff because that's the kind of stuff I think about. And that matters to me. That's the ultimate sellout to me. So I'd rather us get together, somebody take the lead. I'd be glad to. I'm used to being in that position and say, you know what? We're not doing it. Well, Coach Brown, it's easy for y'all to say, no, we're in the same financial situation. We're not in a better financial situation than any of the rest of everybody. We may do more. We're able to work more, and we're able to go out there and get more because we got to go get them. But when it comes to selling our kids out, I can't take it, man. It frustrates me. It angers me. It upsets me wholeheartedly. And I'm sorry for venting, but when I see that kind of stuff and I look at those stats, and it makes me mad. It really does. Because we're trying to preach that we're just as good. Then we go out there and get beat down for peanuts. Don't like it. God bless y'all. Have a wonderful day. Because I am.
Okay. That was Deion Sanders at the conclusion of the coaches' media session. And it went viral. And because he wasn't he wasn't wrong about the payouts that Marshall received and that Georgia Southern received and Appalachian State received, but he skipped over some things. And as a result, I published a tweet on Twitter, and here it is. And I said, one could argue that Deion Sanders is the quote, notice the quotes, the ultimate sellout for not being an honest broker during his rant about HBCU payouts. HBCUs are paid the same, and in some cases more than other PWI FCS schools when they play up against FBS schools. Beware false narratives. Now, needless to say, there were some folks who saw that and, they drew their own conclusions. Reading is fundamental and comprehension is as well, equally important. But for whatever reason, some folks saw that particular tweet and immediately came to the conclusion that I called Deion Sanders a sellout. So, Kendrick, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ken. Listening to that again, 4 days after he made those comments, Coach Sanders made a lot of interesting points. A lot of points we should all think about. There's a lot of nuance in this discussion that I think oftentimes kind of get lost in kind of what a lot of people think is what schools should be doing or what they should not be doing. But this discussion overall has been had time and time again over the years. I wrote last year for the website about this issue, talking to coaches from the MEAC and the SWAC about it. It's very divided opinion. Some coaches feel like Deion, that these games are pointless. They don't help the football team. They risk injury. They risk low morale within the locker room. Other coaches see it as an opportunity to get their kids to play, especially against a Power 5 school, in an arena that they wouldn't otherwise not have a chance to play in, like Alabama State going to the Rose Bowl, which is pretty cool for Alabama State to do that. Get exposure in front of NFL scouts where players playing against potential NFL-style type players. But again, this discussion has been had over the years. HBO Real Sports 5 years ago actually did an entire segment on this, highlighting these games that black colleges play in. One former black college football coach referred to them as blood games because of the nature of these smaller schools playing against these big-time programs and the injury risk. And that was around a time when Devon Gales of Southern ended up being paralyzed after he took a shot in the game against Georgia. So yeah, Coach Sanders had a lot of good points. One of them I don't agree totally on is all the money from these games going to the football program. So some of it goes to the football program, sure, but black colleges are already deemed as low resource institutions to begin with, and they don't have a lot of revenue streams because of insufficient donations, not giant TV contracts, media rights deals, things of that nature. So these games are really important to actually fund not only the football program, but other entities inside athletic departments and within the school. But yeah, your tweet, Ken, it kind of stirred the hornet's nest, if you will. A lot of reaction to it, both on Twitter, YouTube, elsewhere. Because people who read it and you didn't give a follow-up response to it afterwards, so it kind of left a lot of people kind of wondering what you meant by it. But what did you mean by when you were suggested that Coach Sanders could be a sellout for how he kind of framed his argument?
Okay. So, so for clarification, I didn't call Deion Sanders a sellout. I didn't. I said one could argue that Deion Sanders is the ultimate sellout. Those were his words in that rant. But I said for not being an honest broker doing his rant about HBCU payouts. He was right about Marshall and the payout that they received from Notre Dame. He was right about Appalachian State and the payout that they received from Texas A&M. He was right about Georgia Southern. I think they played, but Nebraska, right? And they all won those games, by the way. But what Deion Sanders didn't tell everybody was that those are FBS institutions. Those games involved FBS opponents. The SWAC and the MEAC are FCS conferences. The member institutions are FCS football programs. For those that may not be aware, there's a tiered structure to this. FBS programs just automatically make more because obviously there's a larger overhead, there's a higher scholarship count. They're just the numbers and the expenses are just high by default. And then you have those FCS programs that are limited by scholarships, and the payouts just simply aren't high or that high because that's just the way it is for one. But let me put it like this: you can argue, and you can always say HBCUs deserve more. We all want more. It's never enough. But to the point that I was trying to make with the false narrative is that he wasn't being an honest broker because he made those games, which are FBS contests, but he was trying to compare them to the payouts that FCS HBCUs were receiving. But let me throw some things out here. This was published by Hero Sports, and these are for games for this year. Deion Sanders didn't mention that Duquesne is going to get $400,000 for playing Florida State. He didn't mention that Jacksonville State is getting $300,000 from Tulsa. He didn't mention about William and Mary getting $300,000 from Charlotte. He didn't mention that Northern Iowa was getting $300,000 from Air Force. He didn't mention that Gardner-Webb is getting $325,000 from Marshall. He didn't mention that Stephen F. Austin is going to get $350,000 from Louisiana Tech. The list goes on. He didn't mention that Lamar is getting $350,000 from SMU. He didn't mention that Murray State is going to get $375,000 from Ball State and so forth. He didn't mention that Central Arkansas is getting $475,000 from Ole Miss. So I guess my point is that typically that threshold could be anywhere from $250,000 to $500,000 for FCS programs. That's the range. The method in which those schools are paid, it varies. All FBS programs can't pay $1 million payouts. Most of us should know that. And in some cases, depending on what the parameters are, FCS programs don't necessarily, the needs vary. We have no idea. These schools don't operate the same. But the point that I'm trying to make, or that I made in that tweet, was he either intentionally, or I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, just completely ignored the fact that you made an apples to orange comparison with FBS games as opposed to FCS payouts. But he didn't compare. He didn't mention about anything about those other schools because doing so wouldn't have created the passion that he wanted to stir up. He was trying to generate the emotions of individuals who simply don't know how this process works. But yet, Southern $670,000. What was it? $760,000 from LSU. Alabama State, $300,000 from UAB. Florida A&M did get $450,000 from North Carolina. We don't know what the reasons are, but here is where it gets even more important. For you to indict these HBCU administrators as if some way, somehow, they don't know what they're doing. That's that's somewhat disgraceful and it's disrespectful. And I'm going to let you lead on this, but the bottom line is that Deion Sanders wasn't being an honest broker. And when you put in consideration that the payouts that HBCU, FCS programs are getting are pretty much in line, and in some cases even more than what some of these other schools or FCS schools are getting. So just if you're going to compare, make the right type of comparisons and stop making FBS comparisons. That's what this is ultimately about. And let me add one more thing, just to kind of put some things in perspective here. When LSU played Southern on Saturday, that $760,000 payout to LSU, well, they played McNeese previously, and I believe they played Nichols, or that game was canceled. But the payout for those teams was $500,000. Grambling is going to play LSU next year. That payout is going to be $760,000. And when I spoke with an administrator on Grambling's campus, I was told that amount is going to likely be a little more because they're likely going to be getting just a little bit more to cover travel expenses. So you can't say that these HBCU administrators are negotiating down when $760,000 for an FCS program, that's above, that's not normal. That's above normal. There are a couple of other HBCU games that are upcoming that these teams are going to be getting. Oh, as a matter of fact, Alabama State, he mentioned that game, but UCLA is going to play North Carolina Central next year. And the reported payout for that game is $700,000. So again, how is it that our administrators are negotiating peanuts for for the student athletes when the figures don't necessarily dictate that? So if you want to make the push for more money, you don't have to be dishonest about it. And when I said it could be argued that he was the ultimate sellout, the fact of the matter is, in that particular instance, he did sell out. He sold out his own administrator, his own AD, whether he realizes it or not. He sold out those individuals who clearly don't know about this, and I'm saying may not be as knowledgeable about how this works, and who just automatically assumes that everything that he says is gospel. And the ones that were out there saying, preach, Prime, preach. Yeah, we want to get more money for HBCUs. They are, but they're not being left out. And these administrators are not negotiating down. And you have no facts. There's nothing to support that. When I just provided you with details, and this is published information. It is not hard to find. So make the case for that. So yes, in that particular instance, you did sell out. Oh, and by the way, that committee that you were talking about, it already exists. In this particular case, it's called the Southwestern Athletic Conference. And they meet every year to discuss how we can make the conference better, things that aren't working, things that we might need to eliminate, things that we may need to consider. Presidents, athletic directors, they meet every year. As a matter of fact, all conferences do. So that novel idea that Deion Sanders had about the committee, it started decades ago. Go ahead, man.
Yeah, as I kind of observed just hearing Coach Sanders talk, not only in this particular instance, but like in other instances where he's like kind of questioning why Black colleges operate the way they have operated and do operate. We have to be mindful that he's experiencing this like for the very first time. Like he doesn't come from this world, like, and he admits that, like he's learning on the job. I remember once he said like he knows what like it looks like to be a professional or like to work in a professional environment. He's been in the NFL. He's played Major League Baseball at the highest level. Been in the World Series and Super Bowl, all that stuff. Hall of Famer. So he knows what like it looks like to be successful at anything. And so like that's the only thing he knows. And so like he's trying to identify some of the areas where I guess Black colleges can enhance themselves and recognize their own value, which is not too far fetched from the conversations that been happening recently with these television contracts, media rights deals, with HBCU Go, HBCU League Pass, ESPN even. Like it's a lot of people out here who are wanting and demanding the SWAC and the MEAC and other conferences kind of like reevaluate their own worth and to let these networks and brokers know that, hey, like the price of brick has gone up. The famous line from The Wire. Yeah, but the price of brick is going up. And is it fair to say, and with that being said, is it fair to say that like that black colleges should reevaluate how much they are worth and maybe possibly demand more if they see the need for that to happen?
Sure. Like I said, man, it's not criminal to ask that we want more for our schools. You know, everybody has a role to play. Everybody has a role to play. If you're an alum and you got a little money to give, you know, you can play your role and you can donate whatever you can to help support these institutions. But and look, and I've been critical of some of these administrators too. But I'm also mindful of the fact that because all HBCUs don't operate the same, and unfortunately, because of the newfound attention that HBCUs are getting right now, those who are kind of new to this, those who are not necessarily aware of all the nuances associated with HBCUs, they tend to pack us all together. And they just automatically figure that if it's a problem at this school, it's a problem at this school. And that's not necessarily the case. We know about the FAMU situation with the ineligible players, you know, 26 players. And, you know, yeah, that's newsworthy. But there weren't any other HBCUs that start off the season with 26 ineligible players. That's an unfortunate situation for FAMU, but that was a situation at FAMU. We didn't hear about that. So that's, you know, we got to be careful with that. That's one thing. But if you're going to make an argument for how, you know, for doing more, the key though is, again, you got to put in, you have to put in consideration their levels to everything. And that if you're going to talk about TV deals for the SWAC, again, which is an FCS conference, we get into this, we make this mistake of trying to compare what the SEC and what the Big Ten and Pac-12 and ACC and all these Power 5 conferences. It's okay to kind of look and see what they're doing. But again, look at the SWAC, look at the MEAC, and then ask yourself, okay, well, what are they doing, say, compared to the Southland or the Big South? FCS conferences that are pretty much all in the same boat. Because I can tell you now, those PWI institutions, they've got some issues too. Low resource institutions aren't just limited to HBCUs, by the way. There are some, not a whole lot, but there are some institutions out there that are considered limited resource institutions that are not HBCUs. So I just think that we need to be careful, and that if you do want to make the push, or if you do want to make the suggestion that HBCUs need to do more, and if you want to make comparisons, you have to be careful about the type of comparisons that you make, because individuals who do not necessarily know how these processes work, and they try to compare, and they are always trying to look and see what the big boys are doing per se, you can end up getting yourself in a lot of trouble. You know, and in the case of Deion Sanders, you know, he's new to this. I'm not going to sit up here. I'm certain he means well, but there are clearly areas about the so-called business of college athletics that he just simply is not knowledgeable, or should I say, he doesn't know enough about. And I don't know if anyone has taken the time. I think he's gotten better. I think he's seeing slowly but surely how these things operate. But if you want to make a push, and if you want to be an advocate for HBCUs, and I've said this before, you need to know what you're talking about. And if you're going to make comparisons, make the right type of comparisons. But when you're going to go ahead and make bullshit comparisons about FBS programs and the monies that they're making, and then you want to, castrate and clown HBCU administrators and even insult them to the basically stating that they are negotiate down when you have no proof to suggest that they are. And I just provided you with facts that indicate that they are pretty much in line, if not doing better than everyone else. And people who don't know, that's dangerous. It's dangerous. So, we'll wrap this up, but I will say this to Coach Sanders. There's a simple solution. There's a simple solution to get those 1.4, 1.2, and 1 point whatever plus $1 million paydays. You simply need to become an FBS program. You simply need to become the process isn't easy, but the solution is simple. Appalachian State, Georgia Southern, Marshall, guess what? They were all FCS programs at one point. And look at them now. So they've provided you the blueprint, and leave it up to you to target those particular institutions, to talk about the payday that they received, the schools that they played, and the victories that they had over the course of over the last weekend. The solution is there. They provided you with the blueprint. All you got to do is possibly follow it. There's always been chatter about J-State making the move up to FBS. Well, there you have it. But you don't have to shit on HBCU administrators trying to imply that they're not doing their jobs when you don't have any proof that they aren't. Oh, by the way, Jackson State plays Texas State next year. That payout is $375,000. They play ULM in 2024. That payout is $350,000, according to reports. So if we're going to talk about worth, and no one put a gun to Ashley's head to sign that contract, and I'm using his logic, in the mind of Texas State, you're only worth $375,000, and you agreed to that. In the minds of Louisiana Monroe that you play in 24, you're only worth $350,000, and you agreed for that to that. And I'll just leave it at that. But if you want to move up and you make that money, then that's all you have to do.
Yeah, it's all not so simple as everybody trying to make it out to be. But that is one solution, though. But I don't know if the way I look at it is this: it's complicated. There's a lot of nuance, as I mentioned before. But is it fair to go down that road of when you call anybody a sellout, whether Deion Sanders doing it against a administrator or a tweet saying he's a sellout? Is there something, I guess, to be said about what's in the best interest of the athletes? Do you think like these schools don't have the best interest of the athletes in mind when they making these deals?
No.
And do you think by Deion Sanders saying what he said, that he believes that? Or what you said in your tweet, do you actually believe that Deion Sanders does not have the best interest of Black college administrators in mind or Black schools in mind when he says what he says?
No. I'm saying Deion Sanders wasn't being an honest broker when he made that when he listed off those games. Those are FBS programs, plain and simple. FCS teams, Black or white, aren't getting $1 million paydays at the FCS level, plain and simple. There was an exception. It was at Idaho and Indiana. But that contract was signed back at a time when the University of Idaho was actually an FBS program. They are now FCS now. And I believe that $1.3 million is what Idaho is received. I don't know if they played that game yet or not, but that's what they're getting this year to play. But that's the exception. The larger point is that we need to be careful trying to, one, label these, these HBCU athletic administrators as individuals who aren't making the best type of deals simply because you don't like the dynamics of it. Unfortunately, I think Deion Sanders, to be quite honest with you, I think he just unfortunately sticks his toes in areas that he really shouldn't. He felt the need to address the issue about Bethune-Cookman and how they were moving their game against Jackson State from Daytona Beach to Jacksonville. And when all indicators, and based upon some of the people who live in the area, I think there's some sort of some bikers event or something like that that's going on. And then on top of that, when we talked to Reggie Theus indicated that it's actually going to be in Bethune-Cookman's best interest to play that game in Jackson State, and that there is a actual cost benefit to it. And if you're a visiting coach, and I say this respectfully to the people at Bethune-Cookman and that facility that they play in, which is a city, municipal stadium. I mean, and it serves its purpose for them. But if you're a visiting coach and you had to choose between playing in that facility versus playing in an NFL venue at Jacksonville, it's a pretty obvious choice. And especially if this is supposed to be all about the student athlete. The choice is clear. I've never heard a coach that, and as a matter of fact, I've heard several coaches, whether it be a classic game or whatever the case may be, they talk about all the time how they're looking forward to a matchup because it gives his student athletes an opportunity to play in an NFL venue. They say that all the time. So how would you possibly take issue with going from where Bethune-Cookman typically plays his home games to playing in an NFL venue? And you talk about attendance and all that. That's just really, and I say this, it's really none of your business. All you need to do is just come by and play. You're going to travel anyway. That's not your concern. So, what's good for one school isn't good for another. And, sometimes, man, Jackson State, it has its own unique set of problems that it would probably be best left that you just maybe just deal with those issues and just kind of move forward and make the best of the situation that you got there.
Yeah, I know I said I had one more question, but I got one more question though, for real. And this is from the people. So we're doing this show and we're talking about this topic, and we're talking about the person who started the topic. And so there's been some accusations in online circles that you have some animosity toward Coach Sanders. No matter what he says or what he does, like you allegedly find a way to insert some type of criticism at whatever he says or does. Now, explain yourself on that one.
There's nothing to explain. But I'm going to tell you now, man, and I'm dead serious when I say this, man. Deion Sanders cracks me up more than you guys realize. I don't go out of my way to follow him a whole lot. But when I'm on, for the time that I'm on social media and I might see a little quick, 30-second, 40-second clip and he's doing something, I think it's absolutely hilarious. As a matter of fact, there was a video clip with him and Rob J. And he made some comment about him, the ring, the Kansas City Chiefs ring. Rob J's a Kansas City fan. And he made the comment about something about him being a kid in underwear and da-dun-da-duns. I thought it was hilarious. And I cracked up. I was actually texting, going back and forth with I hope you don't. I don't think he'll mind me talking to Charles Bishop during the media call, and Deion Sanders made a comment about how being in the Walmart and talking about how deep the Walmart was, and he was making a comment, and I sent Charles Bishop a tweet. I said, Deion Sanders shops at Walmart. So no, man. I'm actually, and I'm dead serious, man. I like Deion Sanders. I do. He's done a tremendous job at Jackson State. But most importantly, Kendrick, this is what I do.
Let me ask you this.
Let me finish this point. I've been doing this for a long time. I'm a professionally trained journalist, and I think I've established a certain level of credibility that I've taken it upon myself. That when you say something wrong, I have an obligation to correct it, or at the very least to report the facts. And if you're wrong, you're wrong. And Deion Sanders isn't the only person that I've criticized over the years. And for people who have followed me over the years, they know I'm probably more critical of my institution than anybody. And I love that place dearly. And I've got a son that goes there now. So I just want to make that clear. I have no animosity. This isn't anything personal. And when I make comments on social media, I don't even do it with the intention on trying to get a rise. I could care less about what anybody thinks. I don't do it for the purpose of trying to get a rise. I just say what I need to say. I understand that it will likely generate some sort of a response, but I don't do it for the purpose of trying to generate a response. I just simply do it with the intent of trying to correct a record, or at the very least, provide a different thought process that may not have already been put out there. Because unfortunately, and I'm disappointed by this, I don't think there are enough media outlets within this space that are critical of him when it needs to be done, especially when they know better. And I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask you, like, in regards to everything you said about, like making sure the record's straight on things that said by him or other people within the Black college athletic world. But what about the notion that, hey, like, Deion has space to not always be tidy in things he says, because his larger argument or purpose is to enhance Black colleges and their missions, and trying to elevate them, or get other people to try to help with the cause too. Is there anything to be said by him not always having to be perfect with everything he says, because his mission is a little bit larger than whatever comment he makes?
Well, nobody is perfect. All I've ever said that if you're going to be an advocate for HBCUs, you need to know what you're talking about. I mean, that's ultimately what it comes down to. And when you make certain comments or when you say certain things about HBCUs that are just flatly untrue, especially when there's data out there to support that that is incorrect, you have to go on record and you make that comment. And I don't want to necessarily bring him into the argument, but unfortunately, Roland Martin has done the same thing from time to time. And I think Roland Martin is an excellent talent, hell of a journalist. And when you look at what he's done since his days at TV One, when they decided to fold news, and to see what he's done with his platform is nothing short of phenomenal. But Roland Martin, he gets it wrong too. So this isn't, me being an HBCU graduate and me being in this space. I mean, yeah, you can say I'm impassioned about it, but when I go, and I'm not going to say I go after someone, but when I address someone about something that they've said publicly, it ain't personal. I understand you ain't going to like it. I get it. I can't sit up here and tell you that I necessarily like everything that's being said. I don't care about it. And I'm sure they don't care. I know that they don't care, but I know I get their attention. Somebody's going to tell them. So I'm careful about it. I don't just do it with the intent of trying to, create noise. But like I said, there are times, man, when if something is said and the record needs to be corrected, it needs to be corrected. And I will say this. I get administrators all the time that either text me or will email me, and they will, and they will thank me. And you know what the ironic part about that? A lot of those individuals who call and text me are people that I've been critical of in the past, because they know it's never been personal. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, so the record's straight on that.
Record's straight on that. I'm good with Deion Sanders, man. He's done a phenomenal job. And look, I'll be honest with you. I was actually disappointed, man. When your alma mater didn't win the Celebration Bowl, your boy was a little boy. I was a little upset. A little bothered.
You were upset. I had a whole story written about them winning. Then I had to erase it in the fourth quarter.
I was upset about that, man. I wanted Jackson State to win that. I'm all for HBCUs, but I'm a product of the SWAC, and I'll root for every SWAC too. I'll root for SWAC schools whenever possible. Yeah. So this isn't personal. I get it. You're not going to necessarily like what I say, and I understand that you may not necessarily like the tone about it, but. I'm and yes, and I take it as much as I give it. I get it. It comes with the territory, man. But at the end of the day, dude, we all want what's best, and you can always say there's a different way in terms of how to go about it. But in this particular instance, when you want to indict HBCU administrators and saying that we're playing for peanuts and that we're trying to sell our kids out, when you have no proof to prove that, you have to be corrected on it.